preparing. Right, I think we are live. There's a bit of a lag with the video, Jason. I found out the other day, so I'm going to ignore Facebook because I'll get it up on my phone and see whether it's working. But yeah, there's like a 20-second delay from what we're saying now to what goes out on Facebook. So
I see. Yeah.
It's a bit difficult. There's no point in me watching the Facebook page because but I'll just double check it's working. Right, yes, we're on. I think we're on, it's working. Right, okay. So Jayson, quickly, you might as well start by telling us how long you've been at the Philippine Eagle Foundation for. When did you hatch at the Philippine Eagle Foundation?
Yes, Jimmy. Yeah. So I've been with the foundation for the past 23 years now, going 24 this July. And I started as a young field biologist then. And then, yeah, still happy to work for the foundation.
Brilliant. Because you're now, what's your correct title? So
I'm currently the director for research and conservation. So there are two aspects of the work. It's first is of course research, looking at wild population, studying them, putting on GPS trackers on birds, doing habitat assessments, population surveys. And then the other aspect of the work is doing community engagement and stakeholder engagement to preserve habitats and species. So it's basically using research information in the service of conservation actions with people. And so that's how we sort of make sure that the research information generated feeds into policies and conservation actions on the ground.
Yeah. So anyone that tunes into this that doesn't know, I'll quickly cover. The Philippine eagle is critically endangered. I'll get Jayson to tell us a bit more about that in a minute. And the Philippine Eagle Foundation runs the Philippine Eagle Center as well, which is in Davao, isn't it, Jayson? I've been lucky enough to visit it twice. And that's where, how many pairs of eagles have you got there at the moment?
Well, we have a total of 31 Philippine eagles at the center, and 30 are, most of them are rescued birds from Mindanao, and then some of them are captive bred at the center, and then we have our single recently rescued Philippine eagle from the island of Samar. So this female eagle is the first rescued, rehabilitated Philippine eagle that has been brought to the Philippine Eagle Center. And
I suppose the idea of the Eagle Center is to create a sort of hold a gene, like a DNA bank, really, isn't it? You're obviously rehabilitating injured birds.
True. Yeah. So these birds are sort of representatives of different bloodlines in Mindanao. So we have birds rescued from Mount Apo, from the major mountain ranges, and then using our information about where these birds came from.
What a faff. Hold on. Right, I think we're live again. Sorry, anyone that was watching that, and it got cut off. So Jayson was just talking about, when we got cut off, Jayson was just talking about the eagles that are kept at the center and the work that's done there with them. So the eagles are obviously critically endangered in the wild. How many pairs roughly, or individual birds, do you think are in the wild at the moment, or roughly?
Yeah, so we think there are no more than 400 eagle pairs or adult eagle pairs in the wild that's remaining. And perhaps more than half of them are found on Mindanao Island. So there are 4 islands where eagles are found. You have them on Luzon Island, and then you have them in Leyte, Samar, and then again Mindanao, having perhaps half or more than half of the living Philippine eagle population.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the current state of play with obviously COVID-19 and the pressures? Well, I tell you what, before we answer that, for the people that don't know, what are the pressures that eagles are facing at the moment?
Yeah, so basically there are two major threats to the wild population. One is shooting, hunting, and then trapping. So, well, despite there's a law that protects the bird, sadly, some Filipinos still shoot and kill the Philippine eagle. So we have cases of eagles getting shot by hunters. We've rescued Philippine eagle back in the late 90s, and X-rays showed that the bird had 10 air gun pellets inside its body. So we saw that after X-ray, and then in 2017 we also had a bird whose wing bones were severely broken. So apparently, what happened is that the bird was caught accidentally in traps intended for wild pig and deer. You know, remarkably for such a large bird, they also walk at the forest floor often to look for snakes and rodents,
Yeah,
and some of them end up in traps. So yeah, and then of course there's deforestation. The Philippines have lost 80% of its original forest cover. We have very little forest left, and the Philippine eagles just couldn't survive outside of the forest.
yeah.
So these two, shooting and hunting, and then habitat loss, is a major threat to the eagles.
Yeah, because I remember discussing with you with one of the issues with habitat loss is the fact that obviously people are encroaching and the eagles are losing habitat. People are encroaching on that habitat through farming and so on, and that's obviously bringing eagles to the edge of the forest anyway. And then you get a conflict between and maybe eagles predating livestock or chickens or something like that. So it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Really, the loss of habitat.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, one of the reasons why they're getting shot is that some eagles, especially when they're breeding, feed on domestic animals to their chick, and that's when the farmers get angry and then they shoot it in retaliation. And then, apart from habitat loss, there's also fragmentation. Well, forests are becoming smaller, and then, so for example, we have a Philippine eagle territory that's only over 1,000 hectares, and the nearest large forest cover is about 12 kilometers away, and that's aerial distance. So you can just imagine how hard it is for the juvenile once they leave this isolated forest, and then leave their parents, as they cross open habitats, and that's when they get shot and killed.
Yeah.
So we're also looking at active translocation in the future, like for nesting territories that are isolated. Perhaps we could trap young eagles and then help them cross open areas and then bring them to protected areas to keep them safe.
Because just on that, because obviously you try and satellite tag as many eagles as possible. What sort of things have you found in terms of movement of eagles? Have you found that they will completely avoid open area, trying to move between open areas, anything like?
Yeah, well, interestingly, many of our birds are actually edge birds. They're occupying mostly forest edges, and I think it's because of and this is practically true in Mindanao. This is because many of the preferred habitats are already at the edges, and perhaps because it's easy to see prey items at the forest edges. We had a released bird in Maitum, Sarangani province, and this male bird walks along the forest edge to look for cobras and rodents. So that's his favorite food. Um, so yeah, and then I think it's also because most of the lowland forest has been cleared on Mindanao, and the preferred habitats are mostly in the uplands, but at the edges. We also found out that they're not using um, forest at high elevations.
Yeah.
And that's because I believe the prey items are not there. So it's also a result of the distribution of your preferred food. And apparently these prey items like flying lemurs, civet cats, again, cobras, and rodents, they're mostly at the forest edges too. But then that's a dilemma for the eagles because that's where the people are also. So
Yeah.
again, it's this increasing encounter rates between people and eagles. As to the movements, interestingly, juveniles, when they leave their parents' territory, they either use riparian forests or forests along river system as their
Yeah.
dispersal pathway. And they also use forest patches. Like they can move across open areas, but they use small forest patches as stepping stones. And we saw that particularly with a Philippine eagle that we've been tracking for the past 6 years. Um, and so, yeah, we're really, this is very interesting because it appears that we really have to create a landscape that's environment friendly, and also work on protecting forest patches and um, riparian forest if we want eagles to move around the landscape safely.
Yeah, and so just tell everyone about one of the things I think you said to me when I think I've asked you in the past about one of the things you're most proud of, and I think if I remember rightly, it was to do with the forest guards and all the community work that, and it's something that I'm incredibly impressed with when I've been out there and joined you, is the work that you do with the local community. So just tell people a bit about that work.
Yeah, so, well, I think this is really very important, working with communities, especially in communities that are living close to nesting sites. Well, I think like many raptors, the Philippine eagles are very loyal to the places where they breed. They use it across generations, as long as it's intact. And in the Philippine landscape, um, many of our forests are occupied by indigenous peoples. In fact, you would understand that these indigenous communities have long relations with their environment and wildlife because Philippine eagles are also found in their oral histories or in their cultural beliefs, and also as an element of their origin stories. So you would understand that these communities are seeing the Philippine eagles whenever they do courtship displays, during breeding season when they're vocal. And so what we did was to work with these communities living close to nesting sites and make sure that, if they help out with conservation, that would also result to a better life for them. Um, and since many of the indigenous communities in the uplands are poor, um, and they also need help in terms of economic support, our Forest Guard program aims to bring a decent income to the communities by engaging them to protect the eagles, do monitoring, do foot patrols to prevent threats like illegal logging, and also to take out native traps. As I've mentioned, it's native traps intended for deer and wild pig is a threat to our eagles. So the idea really is to incentivize the services that they do, and this is all the more important because they're really looking forward to clear income to take care of their basic needs. And also we've one of the things that we've also innovated on is to look at the culture of indigenous peoples and then use that also as a reason for them to conserve the eagles. So we've been calling it culture-based conservation, like look at their belief systems, their values, and try to document them and then help them engage their own knowledge, their own beliefs, while also sharing with them what scientific tools can do to help them monitor wildlife. So we have indigenous forest guards who are now using camera traps to monitor deer and wild pig population within their ancestral domains or the indigenous territories. Yeah, and also use radio telemetry. So we're kind of excited about this merger of the scientific knowledge and tools brought in by researchers like us, and then the indigenous peoples using their own local knowledge of wildlife, and their belief systems and values, to achieve conservation.
And it really works, doesn't it? I mean, as I say, I've experienced it firsthand with you going out to a wild nest and meeting the local forest guards on 2 occasions, because and it's for me, it's the only way forward. I think it's the only way forward. This cultural based conservation is fantastic. How many forest guards have you got trained up now to date, roughly?
So we've for the past 4 years that we've been doing it, we had over 700 forest guards across the Philippines. In Davao City, for example, we have 200 forest guards protecting 6 Philippine Eagle territories. And that's only in Davao City. So we've sort of increased the ratio of forest guards to forest protected. Like in the past, the government's ratio is 1 forest ranger to 7,000 hectares of forest. Now in Davao City, we've increased it to 1 forest guard, indigenous forest guard, looking after 250 hectares of forests.
Brilliant.
So, and then, well, an important aspect of this is that it brings tangible benefits to them in terms of additional income. We've also engaged the wife of the forest guard. So we have this cute conservation plushies, these small stuffed toys that our indigenous women sew themselves. So they make this and then we sell it, and then they earn extra income from the sales of this conservation plushies. Now, if you check our website, we have it featured in our website.
I'm trying to see if I've got one here. I brought one home for my mum. I think my mum's got a one of the Rafflesias. Is that right?
Yes, Rafflesia.
But it's in the car actually. It's hanging off the car rear view mirror, and I've got an eagle at home, but it's not here. I should have brought it, but yeah.
So we now have 4 plushies. We have, of course, the Philippine Eagle plushie. We have the Philippine Trogon, which is also an endemic species to the Philippines. We have the Southern Rufous Hornbill, the hornbill that's endemic to Mindanao. And then we have the Mindanao Flying Squirrel, which is also a food item of the Philippine Eagle. So far, these are the plushies that we've sustained. And then we have over 200 indigenous women. And last year, they've earned, or the sales went to about 400,000 pesos.
Brilliant.
And then half of that went to the ladies.
Brilliant.
So that's such a biodiversity friendly enterprise that we also do with indigenous communities.
Because that's one of the other things I was really impressed with. It's not just about the eagle, is it? You know, it's the whole package is included in the conservation work you do. So including what we were talking about before we came on Facebook about growing the trees, the wildlings, and also helping people sell coffee that they're growing, or even working with lawyers, when I've been there before, and you've been helping communities with lawyers against illegal logging and stuff like that.
Right.
It's incredible the work that you do with the local communities.
Yeah, that's what we also learned, that the best thing really to have a partnership with community, and then it's also important to target their aspirations. So before we do this support interventions, we do what we've been calling the community conservation and development planning. So it's a planning process that we do with the village or community, and then ask them about their own aspirations. What are their aspirations for the next 5 years? And then they write it down, and then we broker. We find a way to so that these aspirations are delivered. So some of them are actually, some of the aspirations are daycare centers. It could be water system. It could be a school. It could be agroforestry, seedlings, etc. So it really depends on the aspiration of the community. And when we did that, that's when we saw that these are the tangible benefits that they get for conservation, and that's how you cement their motivation really to go
The
into
commitment,
conservation,
yeah.
and change behavior. Yeah.
I was just going to say, because that reminded me, there was another thing you did which I thought it was so clever, was with digital cameras, where you gave communities digital was it the women in the communities a digital camera, and they took pictures of what they thought.
We've called it Photovoice, and this is a method so that women can also share their thoughts about aspirations that are important for the community. It's basically a way of making sure that you get all the inputs from the different members of the community. And we think that through photographs, women can capture aspirations that often the men, who are often dominant in the community, wouldn't think about. So it's this like woman space where they could freely talk about what they think would be best for their community, and then that aspiration becoming part of their plan. So this is a 5-year plan. Normally it takes about a week to complete the community conservation and development planning, and this is advertised. And then after that, the Philippine Eagle Foundation, with the community and other partners like your local government units, private corporations, etc., and other potential funders, would then help in. And that way, we can say that they have a better life doing conservation and saving eagles and forests rather than destroying it.
Brilliant. Right, someone has asked a question relating to what we've just been talking about. Have you seen or started to see a change in attitudes towards conservation in new generations or younger generations coming forward?
Yeah, I think we're getting some progress, especially with the youth. So, for example, one of the things we did in our community conservation planning was to engage youth as project officers. So they underwent training, and then they helped out with documenting, say for example, biodiversity of the ancestral domain or the surrounding forest. They helped out with gathering data about people. So this data gathering as a prerequisite for planning. And then remarkably, the youth that we've trained when we did this 10 years ago, they're now leaders in their own community. So for example, one of our community project officers is now the barangay captain of one of the villages. And so you can see that it's really empowering, and in their decisions, in their visions for the community, they're uh, taking into consideration Philippine eagle conservation into the decisions. So we keep doing that, hiring, training and hiring indigenous co-researchers or indigenous project officers. We believe that that's one way of empowering them. And then we also benefit from their knowledge because they know the local context, they know the community protocols, and so we learn from them. So it's a co-learning um, opportunity as well. And then they get to earn. Many of these youth are actually out of school youth. They're good, they're intelligent, but then because they're financially short, they couldn't really support their college education. And so we're generating, apart from empowerment, is local jobs actually.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we think that through the direct participation of the youth in our projects, plus of course our education campaigns, we do outreach in the daycare centers that we've set up. We have games for the kids, and then getting them, starting them young, so to speak. And so conservation and eagle conservation specifically is now sort of part of the community psyche, so to speak, and they're proud. And then I think one of the things we've also innovated on is for the indigenous leaders, to and give them support and then the confidence and even the tools to engage local governments, do the presentation themselves using PowerPoints. We provide the tools, the LCD projectors, the venues, and then them telling the donors and the government officials their dream for the community, and in a way that increases their networks and then their social capital, so to speak. So yeah, I believe we're gaining some progress, not only with the youth but also with indigenous leaders, and giving them voice, to get more partners to their plans and projects.
Yeah, and just the moment you mentioned projector, then I don't know why it pinged into my head. Of course, one of we can't not mention the film, the movie, before we finish.
Yes. Yeah.
So how's that all? Obviously, the current situation, you're not able to hold screenings, but I know you've been holding screenings right across the Philippines and in America as well, where the producers and where the cameraman was from. So tell everyone a little bit about the movie quickly. Plug that.
Yeah. So Bird of Prey. Bird of Prey is the latest Philippine Eagle documentary. It was directed and filmed by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and filmed on location by Emmy Award-winning cinematographer Neil Rettig, who was the guy who did the first Philippine Eagle documentary back in the 70s. And then this is the second and only film that was produced. So last year, we had screenings across the Philippines. We were able to screen Bird of Prey in over 100 locations across the Philippines. So this includes cinema screenings, gymnasium screenings. We had one screening in Ormoc, in a city in Leyte, and we had over 7,000 students watching Bird of Prey. Brilliant. And that also resulted to some donations out of the Bird of Prey screening. So for this year, we will be continuing the screenings across the Philippines, but mostly in the uplands. So we're working on a dubbed film. Bird of Prey dubbed in Tagalog or Filipino, the national language, and then Bisaya for local dialect in Leyte, Samar, and Mindanao. But unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 crisis, our screening has been canceled. And then the dubbing, unfortunately, was also stalled. But hopefully, when things normalize, we can continue with screening the film and bring
Yeah.
it to as many Filipinos as possible. But if you want to check out the English version of the film, it's available on for paid screening on Vimeo, Amazon, and there's another platform I forgot. So Vimeo, Amazon, and I'll check the other later.
Well,
We have three platforms.
I'll share it on here. I'll share a picture of the plushies, and I'll share the Bird of Prey movie, because I think it's only about £5 or £6. I've watched it a couple of times and it's fantastic. So yeah, I'll share it on here to make sure people have got a link to it. No problem. I've got a couple of questions have come in. One of them from someone called Keanu, who says, I think Keanu's in the Philippines. He's put
He must
be.
I think I know him.
He's put good evening, so he knows it's night time. He knows what time it is. Yeah. Good evening, Sir Jay. May I ask, what raptor-related studies can I do as a student?
Well, there's plenty of topics that you can focus on. So, for example, the Pinskers hawk eagle. Hawk eagle, it's the most endangered raptor in the Philippines, second to the Philippine eagle. It's a endangered species. Now, we don't know anything about its breeding biology, its diet. So perhaps doing a nest study of the Pinskers hawk eagle would be one. Basic distribution surveys of the Pinskers hawk eagle would also be one. So for example, you concentrate on Mount Apo, find as many nests as possible, and then map out its distribution. You can also do telemetry work, tracking of hawk eagles. I'm quite biased with the hawk eagle because no one's studying it, but then this bird is also endangered, equally endangered. Next endangered species to the Philippine eagle.
So I suppose you don't even have a concrete fit, not a concrete, but an idea. Do you have an idea of how many there is, or a number?
Well, there's an estimate for the population. BirdLife has that data, but then this has not been tested in the real world, so to speak, in the wild. So again, perhaps looking at a certain area, doing distribution, nest distribution mapping, and then at least measure distances between two active nests.
Yeah.
So in a way, you'll have an estimate. And then data is also showing. I have a friend who's trying to monitor illegal wildlife trade of raptors.
Yeah.
And many hawk eagle nestlings are ending up in the illegal wildlife trade. Then you have photos on Facebook of many rescued immature hawk eagles. So I think they're really vulnerable. These Pinskers hawk eagles, and also of course the northern Philippine hawk eagle, which is found only in Luzon.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Hopefully that helps you, Keanu.
Hi, Keanu.
Two questions which are kind of, well, one will answer the other one, I think. So a friend of mine has asked, we've talked about this quite a lot recently. Can I ask if you collaborate with zoos worldwide in a similar way to, say, the bearded vulture collaboration, the European Endangered Species Project? And if you don't, is there something to consider for the future to get better bloodlines? Well, this is something you've already just started, isn't it, really?
Yeah. So I think this is perfect for the Eagle Loan Program. So we have actually started sending eagles to a to Singapore, to Wildlife Reserve Singapore, or Jurong Bird Park. So we have a pair of Philippine eagles loaned to them for the next 10 years. And the idea is for Singapore Zoo to help with breeding the Philippine eagles. So this is part of our efforts to protect the species um, from perhaps diseases. So it's a sort of an insurance policy just in case our captive population at the Philippine Eagle Center gets wiped out by catastrophes. For example, avian flu is now in the Philippines. We had an outbreak in Luzon in 2017, and then recently, just last March 2020, another outbreak. So yeah, we're actually keen on distributing the Philippine eagles to different zoos across the world, and then these zoos helping out with breeding the birds, and then captive bred birds will then be brought back to the Philippines either to become part of the breeding pool or to be released back to the wild.
Yeah.
And we really need help as the late Dr. Perry Ong mentioned, although the Philippine eagle is found only in the Philippines, it's essentially a property of the world. So we really need help from the international community with
Yes.
making sure that the eagles are kept safe.
Because and that answers Simon's just asked whether there are any Philippine eagles in the UK or any part of any captive breeding programs in the UK. And in short, no, there isn't. The only Philippine eagles found outside of the Philippines are at Jurong Bird Park, aren't they, Jason? They're the only ones outside of the Philippines. So yeah, it's something that needs to be addressed, and I know we've discussed it with with one big zoo over here, and hopefully we can. It's something we can help Jayson with and work on. But at the moment, Philippine eagle is only found in the Philippines, and Jurong Bird Park have got a pair in Singapore. So yeah, watch this space. But so just to finish off then. The current climate, the situation we're in at the moment, COVID-19 crisis, what impact is that having on the Philippine Eagle Center, the Philippine Eagle Foundation?
Yeah, well, because of the COVID-19 lockdown, and this is happening across the Philippines, the Philippine Eagle Center has closed, so we're not accepting tours, we're not accepting visitors, and this closure actually hurt the operation so much because we're an NGO, we're a nonprofit, so we don't have enough savings really um, to feed and care for our animals at the Philippine Eagle Center. So apart from the 31 Philippine eagles that we have, we also have over 80 animals, non-Philippine eagles, no mammals. We have deer, we have monkeys, we have crocodiles, other raptors at the Eagle Center, um, and so we really need funds to um, keep feeding them and then taking care of them. So that's one of the um, major impacts of the COVID-19 lockdown on at the Philippine Eagle Center. We also need to pay for our animal keepers, taking care of the animals. In the wild, practically, we have no operations right now. And so there's no surveys happening. We've stopped engaging our indigenous partners with activities, such as population surveys, etc. And we just heard that many of our indigenous communities are going hungry because they're not earning any income because of the COVID-19 lockdown. And one of the things we want to do perhaps in immediately is to help out with food for work projects for the poor indigenous people. So these two major things are the impacts to of the COVID-19 crisis to our operations in general.
Yeah, and we were talking about just before we came on air, again, so that one of the big impacts you mentioned was that because the local indigenous people who might be growing coffee beans or bananas or any of the products that they now can't move them into town cities to sell them, or they can't go into town cities to earn a living from just doing basic manual labor, as you said, has meant that they're now having to look at other ways to create an income, and that's coming from things like slash and burn farming to grow their own vegetables, to feed, just to basically feed themselves, and obviously that's going to have an impact on, well, habitat, the eagles and other wildlife as well. So it people forget about it, but it does have a big impact on
Yes,
already
that's true.
the work that you've done. So
Yeah,
yeah.
we've been in touch with some of our contacts at the community, and for one community, for example, all of the able-bodied men and women already left the village and went to the forest. It was only the elders who were left at the community. And so they actually reached out if we could help organize, food provisions, and then basic needs, such as soap, of course, sugar, things like that, coffee, because practically there's no trade, no economic activity in the uplands. So we're trying to look into that as well.
Yeah. Oh well, good. Yeah, good luck with that. We're going to discuss more outside of this conversation how we can try and help over here from the UK. So watch this space. We'll try and link up with you and help you out. Right, Jayson, we've overran. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know it's evening over there in the Philippines. So
no worries, Jimmy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. For taking the time to talk to us. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you. And if I get any more questions, I'll put them to Jayson and in a separate thing and try and answer them. And I'll share a load of stuff on Facebook next for the work that you do. Anyway, right. Cheers, Jayson. I'll get rid of the video and you're free to enjoy have some downtime.
Thank you, Jimmy. Take care.
Right, take care. All right. Bye bye.